Walking in to buy my ticket for Love Lies Bleeding, I expected a cheap, strong woman action movie with a lot of emphasis on the plight of the lesbian lifestyle and prejudice. I've never had a high opinion of Kristen Stewart, since every role seems to be a blank, open-mouthed stare. Katie O'Brien I had to look up, but I was impressed they got a female bodybuilder for the role, rather than just CGIing some muscles on a bigger-name star who doesn't like the gym. Here's looking at you, Love and Thunder. I realized my impression might not be that cut and dried when the guy at the counter felt the need to tell me that everyone had come out of the theater describing the movie as weird. He said, "No one hates it, but they don't sing its praises either. They just all say it's weird." All right, I like weird. Now I'm intrigued. I had no idea going in that this movie was set in 1989, but from the first shot, I knew this was an 80s movie. The cars, haircuts, furniture, all screamed classic 80s slum setting. The rampant use of cassette tapes plugged into boom boxes, the chain smoking in every scene, and the news reports about crack cocaine busts create an atmosphere that is almost more 80s than the 80s themselves actually were. There is also a subtle callback that only those of us that lived through the 80s are likely to recognize. The camera work in the opening all has a subtle, grainy texture to it. Colors are slightly muted, and the edges aren't as sharp as we've become used to. It's not perfectly describable, but kids who grew up with MacGyver, Airwolf, Quantum Leap, and other popular shows of the time will recognize it immediately. This isn't just a movie showing an 80s scene, it's doing it in true 80s style. We open on the gym that Lou, played by Kristen Stewart, works at. We immediately get a workout montage scene that feels slightly more art film, with close-ups of sweat and nipples. Lou lives a less than exciting life, watching over the gym, unclogging toilets, and trying to fend off an overeager admirer, Daisy. While Lou is no catch, with her greasy mullet and wife-beater tank top, it's easy to see why she's not eager to hook up with Daisy. Daisy's brown, stained teeth and wild eyes would turn off even the most desperate lover. In one scene, when Lou has to kiss her, Lou obviously wants it over with quickly. While seemingly friendly, Daisy, like the rest of the movie, just feels slightly dirty. The relationship between Lou and Jackie, the driving force of the movie, feels the same. Early on, it's a cheap transactional thing that is only supposed to last a couple of days. Jackie needs a place to stay and someone to cook her eggs, and we've already seen her trading sex for a job to none other than Lou's brother-in-law, JJ. Over time, the two bond, but it's a relationship now built on possessiveness, manipulation, drugs, and a desperate need not to be alone. In fact, despite being labeled an action romance, nothing in this movie feels romantic. Yeah, they're lesbians, but it just feels like a thing in the movie. Their lesbianism isn't a major plot point and is mostly glossed over. If you replace Kristen Stewart with a man, the only reason it doesn't work is that many of her actions would become unbelievable. There's no neat woman finding herself story arc. For a movie with so much graphic sex, it isn't even very sexy. For those who saw the trailer and like me were misled, there is also no strong female character in this movie. In fact, exactly the opposite. The movie is made up entirely of women trying to look strong while covering up massive insecurities and flaws. No one is good, and most of them aren't even very nice. Lou is thin, fragile-looking, and pivots between being disconnected from the world around her to being utterly obsessed with and focused on Jackie. She is so driven to save those around her, whether they want it or not, that she is rendered completely incapable of controlling her own life. My opinion of Kristen Stewart's acting has not improved. She still has the same flat, open-mouthed stare and shows very little emotional nuance. However, in this case, the role works for her, even if she can't work for it. Jackie is an emotionally fragile woman who tries to feel secure and powerful by bodybuilding, first naturally and then with the help of steroids. Slight spoiler here, the steroids, rather than giving her the famous roid rage, make her first manic and then psychotic. This leads to bad decisions, that leads to self-loathing, to a need to feel powerful again, and back to steroids. Beth, Lou's sister, is married to a cheating husband who beats her regularly, yet she remains, professing her love for him, caring for their 3 children, and sporting a collection of injuries that amasses as the movie goes on. Daisy, Lou's admirer, is desperate to get with Lou. They never say, but the implication is that they once hooked up, and Daisy never got over her. Daisy is, perhaps, where Lou turns when she's desperate for sex and there isn't anything better around. Daisy is shrill when talking to Lou, a frantic desperation behind her smile, and gives the impression she's always on the verge of tears. The only truly strong character is Lou Sr., played by Ed Harris. As always, he knocks this badass role out of the park, portraying a man who doesn't hesitate to make decisions, takes the actions needed to keep things running smoothly, and does what needs to be done. Of course, he's also a complete psychopath, so he doesn't have those pesky emotions getting in the way. Even here, though, the movie adds some slight nuances here and there, so he isn't a completely flat, two-dimensional bad man character. There are a couple other outstanding points in this movie that deserve mention, starting with the writing. The focus is firmly on the characters and their flaws. Jackie is adopted and wants to get away from the rural town she grew up in. Lou specifically mentions that her father doesn't care that she likes women. Lou Sr.'s power in the town means that if Beth wanted out of her marriage, one way or the other, it could easily be done. She is the one who is choosing to stay. The movie never attempts to blame issues on society, hatred of gays, misogyny, or any other ism. Being set in the 80s, it would have been an easy out for a director looking for that route. The grittiness is also engaging. Many movies these days feel too clean. Not physically, there may be dirt and blood in scenes, but they're emotionally tidy. You know exactly how you should feel about each character, there's no complexity. If the protagonist suffers, it's righteous. If they are hurt, it's noble. There's none of that here in Daisy's stained teeth, wounded looks, and hysterical laughter. Lou's constantly mussed hair, and Jackie's bruised veins feel more like an adult version of The Outsiders, not a stamped-out, by-the-numbers production designed to satiate the masses. There were so many tropes I kept waiting for that never emerged. There were easy, comfortable story directions they could have taken and didn't. Do the good guys win in the end? Well, that depends. Are there any good guys? The second mention needs to go to the special effects. I can't rave about them in too much detail without giving away major spoilers, but many of the effects were practical makeup. The design team incorporated CGI only when absolutely necessary, and the results are jaw-dropping, memorable, and most importantly, believable. There are several standout shots you will instantly recognize when you see the movie, and those will really stay with you. Most of the movie is done with pretty standard shots and lighting, which makes the occasional horror movie flashes of red and black jarring in a way that really works. Jackie's hallucinations pack far more of a punch, and her flex scenes, used repeatedly as she grows more obsessed with her own body, transition from an artistic display of the human form to a grotesque mockery, amplified by popping veins and the sound of grinding bones that will leave you feeling a little ill. Comparisons can be made to a certain Marvel movie with green-toned muscle effects, and the effects here certainly come out on top. I was unable to find the budget of Love Lies Bleeding, but I'd be willing to bet there was less money spent on these effects than that certain Marvel muscle woman. The difference between good quality effects and rushed reshoots is clear. The soundtrack wasn't memorable, but I'm not sure you'd want it to be. The wrong music could either reduce the oddity of the scenes or drive them over the edge as just being too much. Here, the tracks carry the mood without overshadowing everything or standing out too much. Even when I made an attempt to pay attention to the soundtrack, it faded into the background within minutes. So based on all this praise, you'd probably assume I love the movie. The truth is, though, I'm still not sure. It wasn't a fun popcorn flick. It was uncomfortable in places that reminded me a little of Clockwork Orange. It doesn't have the same over-the-top artsiness of Clockwork, but there are similarities in how it made me feel. It's a well-made movie. I'd go so far as to say it's a good movie, but I'm not sure I could say I enjoyed the movie. I'm glad I saw it, yet I find myself returning to Clockwork Orange similarities in that I would recommend it to others without hesitation, but I don't know if I would watch it again anytime soon. It's just weird.